The day after we buried Mom, my siblings finally showed up. Not to help pack her things or reminisce about childhood memories. They came with a realtor and eviction papers. I guess they thought living here as Mom's caretaker for 7 years made me nothing more than a live-in nurse who'd outlived her usefulness. My name is Reagan, and I'm the middle child who never learned to say no, the responsible one, the one who put her life on hold when Dad died and Mom's health started failing. While my older brother Van chased corporate success in Chicago and my younger sister Quinn built her Instagram perfect life in LA, I was here, changing sheets, managing medications, holding Mom's hand through endless nights of pain. "We need to discuss the sale timeline," Van announced, striding into the living room like he owned the place. His girlfriend Alyssa trailed behind him, designer handbags swinging. Quinn perched on Mom's antique armchair, scrolling through her phone. "Sale timeline?" I kept my voice steady, though my hands shook as I set down my coffee mug. I wasn't aware we were selling. "Be reasonable, Reagan," Quinn sighed without looking up. "You can't afford to maintain this place on your own. We're doing you a favor." The realtor, a sharp-suited woman with too bright lipstick, spread papers across the coffee table. "The market's hot right now. We could list by next week." "I've already had interest from developers, Van added. "They'll tear it down, build luxury condos. Split 3 ways, we're looking at 7 figures each." I stared at the family photos on the mantel. Mom and Dad on their wedding day, the 5 of us at the beach, back when we were actually happy. "And where exactly am I supposed to go?" "There are plenty of nice apartments in your price range," Alyssa chimed in, as if she had any right to an opinion. "You could get a fresh start." "A fresh start." I laughed, but there was no humor in it. After I gave up my career, my relationship, my entire life to care for our parents while you two couldn't be bothered to visit more than twice a year? Van's jaw tightened. "We contributed financially." "The bare minimum," I cut in, while I handled everything else. The doctor's appointments, the medications, the midnight emergencies. Where were you when Mom fell and broke her hip? When she needed chemotherapy? When Dad was dying? "Ancient history," Quinn waved her hand dismissively. "The point is, you never paid a dime toward this house. You lived here rent-free. Now it's time to be practical." I stood slowly, walked to Mom's old bureau. The second drawer stuck slightly. It always had. Inside, beneath her carefully folded scarves, lay a manila envelope. "Actually," I said, pulling out the deed, "Mom signed the house over to me last year. Full ownership. It's already done." The silence was deafening. Van snatched the paper, his face reddening as he scanned it. Quinn abandoned her phone, finally paying attention. This can't be real," Van sputtered. "Mom would never—" "Grace Morrison witnessed it," I said, naming our family attorney. "It's completely legal. Mom wanted to ensure I'd be taken care of after everything I sacrificed. She knew exactly what you two would try to pull." "You manipulated her," Quinn accused, standing now. "She was sick, confused." "She was perfectly lucid," I replied. "Unlike when you convinced her to add you as a signatory on her bank account, or when Van borrowed against Dad's life insurance without telling anyone." The realtor gathered her papers awkwardly. "I should go." "Yes, you should." I moved to the front door, holding it open. "And you can all leave with her. This is my house now. I earned it." "We'll fight this," Van threatened, his voice low. "You have no idea what you're doing." I met his gaze steadily. "No, brother. For the first time in my life, I know exactly what I'm doing. Now get out of my house." They left in a storm of threats and slammed doors. I stood in the sudden quiet, my heart pounding but my mind clear. Through the window, I watched Van punch the steering wheel of his BMW while Quinn gesticulated wildly on her phone. My hands were still shaking, but not from fear anymore. For years, I'd been the family doormat, the reliable one they could count on to cave in to their demands. They never imagined I'd grow a spine, but people change. And as I looked around the home I'd fought so hard to protect, I realized this was just the beginning. They thought they could bully me into submission one last time. Instead, they'd awakened something they never saw coming. A sister who was finally done being nice. They're claiming Mom wasn't mentally competent when she signed. I sat across from Grace Morrison in her downtown office, watching her review Van's legal threat. Can they do that? Grace removed her reading glasses, fixing me with the same steady gaze I'd known since childhood. They can try, but I documented everything thoroughly. Your mother knew exactly what she was doing. Tell me again, I said, needing to hear it. Tell me how it happened. She called me to the house last March. You were at the pharmacy picking up her prescriptions. Grace smiled softly. She said, I need to protect my Reagan. The others, they've made their choices. Then she signed the deed transfer right there at her kitchen table. My throat tightened. Van's lawyer is demanding her medical records. Of course he is. Grace pulled out a thick folder. Which is why I had her primary physician conduct a cognitive assessment the day before. Full mental capacity, documented and notarized. The knot in my chest loosened slightly. You thought of everything. Your mother did. She wasn't blind to what was happening, Reagan. She saw who showed up and who didn't. My phone buzzed. Another text from Quinn. You're making a huge mistake. Call me. I switched it off. They're telling everyone I manipulated her, that I'm unstable. Let them talk. Grace leaned forward. You were there every day for 7 years. Where were they when she needed her medication at 3 a.m.? When she couldn't keep food down during chemo? When she just needed someone to hold her hand? The memories hit hard. Mom's frail body shaking with sobs after another canceled visit from Quinn. Van's secretary sending flowers instead of him showing up for Dad's funeral. Me, alone in the emergency room at midnight, again and again and again. I gave up everything, I whispered. My job at the gallery, Otto, any chance at a normal life. And they gave up nothing, Grace finished, which is precisely why your mother made her choice. A knock at the door interrupted us. Grace's assistant entered with a courier envelope. This just arrived for Ms. Rivera, marked urgent. Inside was a formal notice from Van's attorney, demanding access to all financial records related to Mom's care over the past 5 years. They're fishing, Grace said, scanning the document. Looking for any mistake they can use against you. Did you keep records? Every receipt, every bill, every withdrawal. I'd learned early to document everything, knowing this day might come. But there's something else bothering me, something Dad said before he died about a trust fund, but I can't find any paperwork. Grace frowned. What trust fund? I don't know. He was pretty heavily medicated by then, but he kept saying I needed to ask Mom about it. I handled your parents' estate planning. There was no trust fund. Unless... I stopped, remembering something. Unless it was set up before you became their attorney. Mom mentioned once that they had someone else handling their finances when we were kids. Grace made a note. Give me the name if you remember it. I'll look into it. Walking home later, I passed the coffee shop where Otto and I used to meet every Sunday. He'd wanted to marry me, to build a life together. Instead, I'd chosen my family obligations. Last I heard, he was engaged to someone else. My phone buzzed again, this time a voicemail from Van. You think you're so clever, don't you? But we both know what really happened that last week before Mom died. You really want that getting out? I froze on the sidewalk, my blood running cold. What was he talking about? The house was dark when I arrived, but something felt off. The side gate was slightly ajar. Inside, nothing seemed disturbed, but there was a faint smell of cigarette smoke, Quinn's brand. In Mom's study, the filing cabinet drawers were all slightly open. They'd been looking for something. But what? I pulled out Dad's old letters, the ones I'd been reading earlier. There it was again, in his shaky handwriting. Make sure you ask your mother about the trust. It was meant for you, Reagan. Don't let them... The rest was illegible, but it was enough to know I was missing something big, something Van and Quinn might already know about. My phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Check behind the painting in the dining room. RR for Robin? Our next-door neighbor who'd lived here even longer than we had? I walked to the dining room, heart pounding. Behind Mom's favorite landscape painting was a small safe I'd never noticed before, and taped to the back of the frame was a key. The key felt heavy in my palm as I crossed the lawn to Robin's house. She opened the door before I could knock, ushering me inside with a finger to her lips. "I've been waiting for you to find it," she said, pouring 2 glasses of wine. "Your mother made me promise to wait until they showed their true colors." "You knew about the safe?" "I knew a lot of things." Robin settled into her armchair. "I've lived next door for 20 years, watched you kids grow up, watched you stay while they left. And 2 weeks ago, I watched Van break in through the back door while you were at the hospice with your mother." My hand tightened around the wine glass. "What did he take?" "Nothing. But he spent an hour in your father's study, burning papers in the fireplace." She leaned forward. "Your mother knew he would try something like this. That's why she gave me copies." Robin disappeared into her study, returning with a thick manila envelope. "Everything your father wanted you to know is in here, including details about that trust fund." I spread the documents across her coffee table. Bank statements, legal papers, a letter from Dad dated just weeks before his death. "My darling dusty spinster," I read aloud, Quinn's recent mocking words echoing my mother's old cruel nickname. "Always sacrificing yourself for everyone else." "Your mother regretted saying that," Robin interjected softly. "She told me it kept her awake at night, how she treated you." I continued reading. "The trust fund was set up when you were born. Your grandfather insisted each grandchild have one, but your mother and I were young and foolish. We let Van convince us to combine all 3 funds for his business venture. It failed spectacularly, but by then the money was gone. Your sister's portion too. We've been trying to make it right ever since." "That's why they're so desperate for the house," Robin said. "It's the only asset left to cover what they lost." My phone buzzed. Quinn again. "You were always Mom's little puppet, her pathetic shadow. Give up the house, or everyone will know what a manipulative fraud you are." "They're getting nasty," Robin observed. "They've always been nasty. I just never fought back before." I picked up another document, a bank statement showing regular transfers from Dad's pension account to an offshore holding company. Van's company. "He was stealing from Dad even before he died," I whispered. "Mom must have known." "She knew a lot more than she let on." Robin pulled out her phone, showing me a video. "I took this the day Van broke in. Watch." The grainy security footage showed Van emerging from our house, stuffing papers into his briefcase. He made a phone call. "It's done. She'll never find the original will now. As far as anyone knows, Dad left everything to me." My hands shook as I gathered the papers. "I need to show these to Grace." "Be careful," Robin warned. "They're cornered animals now, and your sister's been parked down the street for an hour, watching your house." I peered through the blinds. Sure enough, Quinn's red Tesla sat idling at the corner. "Use my back door," Robin suggested, "and Reagan, there's something else you should know. The night your mother died at the hospice, Van visited her first, alone. The nurse told me he was there for almost an hour." A chill ran through me. Why didn't anyone tell me? Because he signed in under a different name, but I recognized him leaving. He looked satisfied. I remembered Van's threatening voicemail. "We both know what really happened that last week before Mom died. I need to talk to that nurse," I said, standing. "Already got her number." Robin handed me a slip of paper. "Her name's Maria. She said she's been waiting for someone to ask." Walking home through the growing darkness, I took the long way around to avoid Quinn. The house felt different now, heavy with secrets. In Dad's study, I knelt by the fireplace, reaching deep into the ashes. My fingers found something, a partially burned envelope, the edges crumbling, but the contents still legible. My phone lit up with a text from Grace. "Don't react to anything they say or do. Just got a call from Otto. He's working at the county records office now. Says Van was there yesterday, trying to access sealed documents about your mother's death certificate. Another text followed quickly. Be careful. They're not just after the house anymore. This is about covering their tracks. I unfolded the burnt paper from the fireplace. Through the char marks, I could make out what looked like a modified version of Dad's will, dated just weeks before his death. But the signature, something was off about it. The sound of breaking glass downstairs made me freeze. Then Quinn's voice. Reagan, we need to talk. Now. I shoved the burnt will into my pocket and grabbed my phone, quickly texting Robin, Quinn broke in. Call police. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs. I know you're up there, Quinn called out. Stop being so dramatic and just talk to me. I stepped into the hallway. Quinn stood at the top of the stairs, still wearing her designer workout gear, looking completely unrepentant about breaking into my house. There's nothing to talk about, I said. You broke a window. I'm calling the police. Oh, please. She rolled her eyes. It's still my childhood home, and we both know you won't call the cops on family. You stopped being family the moment you and Van tried to steal my house. She advanced toward me, her perfectly manicured hand trailing along the wall. Is that what you think this is about? The house? God, you're even more naive than Mom said. What's it about then, Quinn? The trust fund you and Van lost? She stopped short, her fake smile faltering. How did you... I know everything. The combined trusts, Van's failed business, the money he stole from Dad's pension. Should I keep going? You don't know anything, she snapped, but her voice shook slightly. Van said you'd try to twist things. Van's been lying to you for years, just like he lied about Dad's will. I pulled out the burnt document. Recognize this? Your brother's handiwork? She snatched it, scanning the charred pages. Where did you get this? The fireplace. Van's not as thorough as he thinks. Headlights swept across the windows as a car pulled into the driveway. Quinn tensed. That'll be the police, I said. Want to explain why you broke in? This isn't over. She thrust the paper back at me and hurried down the stairs. But when the front door opened, it wasn't the police. It was Otto. My heart stopped. He looked exactly the same. Tall, kind-faced, the slight gray at his temples the only sign of the 5 years since I'd ended things. Reagan? He looked between us, confused. Your neighbor called me, said you might need help. Quinn's eyes narrowed. Well, if it isn't the one that got away, still cleaning up Reagan's messes? Get out, Quinn, I said quietly. Before I press charges. She laughed, but it sounded hollow. You know what's funny? Mom always said you were the smart one, the responsible one. But you're just as clueless now as you were then. She brushed past Otto and slammed the door behind her. Through the window, I watched her speed away in her Tesla. You okay? Otto asked, stepping closer. Robin said there's been trouble. That's an understatement. I showed him the burnt will. Think you could look at this, with your legal background? He studied it under the hallway light. This is definitely forged. Look at the notary stamp. It's dated 3 weeks after your father died. Can you prove it? Better than that. He pulled out his phone. I can access the county records database. Your father's real will should be... He tapped the screen. That's weird. What? Someone tried to access it yesterday multiple times, got flagged in the system. Van, I said. He's trying to cover his tracks. Otto's eyes met mine. Reagan, what exactly is going on here? I told him everything. The house, the trust fund, Robin's video of Van burning documents, the mysterious circumstances around Mom's death. Jesus, he whispered when I finished. This is way bigger than a property dispute. I know, and I'm scared, Otto. Really scared. He reached for my hand, then seemed to think better of it. Let me help. I can pull records, track paper trails. If Van's been manipulating documents... A notification pinged on my phone. A bank alert. Someone had tried to access Mom's account from an IP address in Chicago. Van's getting desperate, Otto said, reading over my shoulder. Good. I replied. Desperate people make mistakes. Another text from Robin. Maria the nurse agreed to meet. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. She says there's something you need to know about your mother's last day. Otto squeezed my shoulder. You shouldn't go alone. I won't, I said. But first, I need you to help me understand exactly what Van's been doing with these forged documents. Because whatever happened that last week, whatever he's trying to hide, I think it's all connected. Where do we start? I led him to Dad's study. With the ashes in this fireplace, Van may have burned the evidence, but he didn't know about Mom's copies. Time to put it all together. The hospice coffee shop was nearly empty when Maria slid into the seat across from me. She looked nervous, constantly checking over her shoulder. I could lose my job for this, she said, pulling out a thin folder. But what happened that night? It wasn't right. Otto sat beside me, his presence steadying. Take your time. Your brother came in around 8 p.m., Maria began. Signed in as Michael Stevens. He had papers with him, legal documents. I heard him pressuring your mother to sign. My throat tightened. She was heavily medicated. Exactly. Maria's hands shook as she opened the folder. She wasn't competent to sign anything, but he insisted, said it was just routine paperwork about her care. Did you see what she signed? No, but afterward he made a phone call in the hallway. I heard him say, "It's done. She signed it. Now nobody can trace the money." Otto leaned forward. Did you document any of this? Maria nodded, sliding over a paper. My shift notes. I wrote everything down, including the exact time and what I overheard. I also... She hesitated. I took photos of your mother's visitor log, the real one, before he replaced it with a new sheet that didn't show his visit. The images on her phone showed clear evidence of tampering. Van's fake name, the original log, everything. 2 hours later, Maria continued, your mother's heart rate dropped suddenly. It wasn't what we expected, given her condition. The implication hung heavy in the air. Are you saying... I couldn't finish the sentence. I'm saying you should request a toxicology report. Maria stood up. That's all I can tell you, but whatever your brother was covering up, it was worth killing for. After she left, Otto and I sat in stunned silence. We need to call Grace, he finally said. Not yet. I pulled out my phone, showing him the text I'd just received from Quinn. Need to talk, alone. I know what Van did. It's a trap, Otto warned. Probably, but she sounds scared. Then let's be smart about this. He pulled out his laptop. While you meet Quinn, I'll start digging into Van's financials. My clearance at the county office lets me access certain records. I agreed to meet Quinn at a busy restaurant downtown. She was already there when I arrived, looking uncharacteristically disheveled. Van's gone crazy, she blurted before I could sit down. He's threatening me now, too. Why? Because I found this. She pulled out her phone, showing me an email thread between Van and Mom's old broker. He didn't just steal from Dad's pension. He's been embezzling from his own company. Millions! The house was supposed to cover his tracks before the audit next month. And Mom found out? Quinn nodded, tears smearing her mascara. That's why he... She broke down completely. My phone buzzed. Otto. Found something big. Van transferred huge sums offshore the day after your mother died. Also, Alyssa just called Grace. Says she has proof of criminal activity. I know about the offshore accounts, I told Quinn, and the forged will, and what happened at the hospice. He made me help him, she whispered. Said we'd both go down if anyone found out. But Reagan, I swear I didn't know he was going to... Going to what, Quinn? Kill our mother? She flinched. He said it would look natural, that she was dying anyway. I didn't think he'd actually... My hands shook as I pulled out my phone to call Grace. But before I could dial, another text came through, from Van himself. Final warning, little sister. Back off or everything burns, including that precious house. Then from Robin. Fire trucks at your house. Come now. Quinn saw the message and went pale. Oh God, he really did it. I was already running to my car. Through the downtown traffic, I could see smoke rising from my neighborhood, from my home, from everything Mom had tried to protect. But Van had made a crucial mistake. He didn't know about the safe, about the documents Robin kept, about Maria's evidence, about Otto's access to county records. He thought he could bury his crimes in ashes. Again. My phone rang. Grace. Don't go home. Meet me at my office. Alyssa's here with proof of everything. And Reagan, the police are on their way to arrest Van. I looked at Quinn, slumped in my passenger seat. You need to decide right now. Are you with him, or are you going to tell the truth? She wiped her eyes, straightened her spine. I'll tell them everything. I'm done being afraid of him. As we raced through the streets, I realized something. Van hadn't just tried to destroy evidence. He'd tried to destroy me. But from these ashes, justice would finally rise. Grace's office was chaos when Quinn and I arrived. Alyssa paced nervously, clutching a USB drive. Otto hunched over his laptop, printing documents. 3 police detectives occupied the conference room. The fire was contained, Grace said, meeting us at the door. Mostly smoke damage to the kitchen. They found gasoline traces. Van's not answering his phone, Alyssa said. But I have everything. Recordings, emails, bank statements. He's been laundering money through shell companies for years. One of the detectives approached us. Ms. Rivera, we need your statement about the hospice incident. For the next hour, I recounted everything. Maria's evidence, the forged documents, the suspicious circumstances of Mom's death. Quinn corroborated it all, her voice shaking as she described Van's escalating desperation. He said nobody would look too closely at another terminal cancer patient dying, Quinn admitted. He needed her signature on those papers before he gave her an overdose of morphine, Alyssa finished. He told me it was mercy, that she was suffering anyway. She handed the USB drive to the detective. It's all here, including his confession to me. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Roof, now, or I release proof that you killed Mom for the inheritance. He's here, I showed the message to the detective. We'll send officers up. No, I interrupted. He's desperate. Let me talk to him first. Reagan, no, Otto protested. I need to hear him say it. I need to know why. The detective nodded reluctantly. We'll be right behind you. First sign of trouble, we move in. The evening air was cool on the roof. Van stood near the edge, his expensive suit wrinkled, his face haggard. It was supposed to be mine, he said as I approached. All of it. I was the oldest. So you killed our mother for it? She was dying anyway, he shouted. Another week, maybe 2. I just accelerated things before she could change the will again. But she already had, I said. She gave me the house months before. You killed her for nothing. He laughed bitterly. Nothing? That house was my last chance to cover the missing money before the audit. $40 million, Reagan. Do you understand what they'll do to me when they find out? They already know. Alyssa recorded everything. The color drained from his face. She wouldn't. She did. It's over, Van. The police are here. Quinn's telling them everything. Quinn? His expression turned ugly. That little parasite only survived this long because I carried her, just like I carried this whole family. You destroyed this family, I corrected. You stole our trust funds. You embezzled from your company. You killed our mother. And you're just so perfect, aren't you? He stepped closer, menacing. The dutiful daughter, the martyr. Did you ever tell anyone how you begged Mom to change her will? How you manipulated her when she was weak? That's your story, not mine, and we both know it. It's my word against yours. No, I said quietly. It's your word against evidence. Security footage, bank records, medical reports, Maria's testimony, Alyssa's recordings, Quinn's statement. You're finished. He glanced toward the roof's edge. Maybe, but I'm taking you down with me. He lunged suddenly, grabbing my arm. But before he could move, Otto burst through the roof door, tackling him. Police swarmed in seconds later. "Van Rivera," the detective announced, cuffing him. "You're under arrest for the murder of Eleanor Rivera, embezzlement, fraud." I watched them lead him away, his threats echoing across the roof. "This isn't over. You think you've won? I'll destroy you." Back in Grace's office, Quinn hugged me for the first time in years. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, "for everything." "We found the original will," Otto announced, holding up a document. "The real one, from before Van's forgery. Your father left the house to your mother, and she left it to you. It's all legal." "And the trust fund money?" Quinn asked. "Gone," Grace said. "But Van's assets will be seized. Some of it might be recoverable." My phone buzzed one last time. Robin. "Fire damage isn't bad, mostly smoke, but you'll need somewhere to stay while it's cleaned up." "Stay with me," Otto offered quietly, "just until the house is fixed." I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since he'd come back into my life. "I need time," I said, "to process everything." He nodded, understanding. "I'll be here. When you're ready." Quinn touched my arm. "What happens now?" Now? I thought about Mom, about justice, about family. Now we rebuild, but differently this time, with truth. The city lights sparkled beyond Grace's windows as night fell. Somewhere out there, Van sat in a cell, his empire crumbling. But here, in this moment, surrounded by people who chose truth over greed, I finally felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. The courthouse buzzed with tension as Van's trial began. 3 months had passed since his arrest, but seeing him in an orange jumpsuit, shuffling in with shackled feet, still felt surreal. "All rise," the bailiff called. Quinn sat beside me in the gallery, gripping my hand. Behind us, Otto and Grace provided silent support. Even Robin had come, armed with her security footage evidence. The prosecutor laid out the case methodically: financial fraud, document forgery, and finally, the premeditated murder of our mother. Each piece of evidence hit like a physical blow. The defendant visited Eleanor Rivera at Sunset Hospice on April 15th, the prosecutor stated. Nurse Maria Thompson will now testify about what she witnessed that night. Maria took the stand, her voice steady as she described Van's actions. "He insisted on being alone with Mrs. Rivera. When I checked vital signs later, her morphine levels were significantly elevated. Van's attorney tried to discredit her. Isn't it possible Mrs. Rivera simply declined naturally? The toxicology report shows lethal levels of morphine," Maria replied. "That doesn't happen naturally." Next came Alyssa, looking uncomfortable but determined. She played the damning recording. Van's voice, slightly slurred from whiskey, confessing everything. "Had to shut her up," his recorded voice echoed through the courtroom. "She knew about the money, threatened to tell the board. Stupid old woman couldn't keep her mouth shut." Van stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. His attorney looked increasingly defeated. The financial evidence was overwhelming. Otto had traced every fraudulent transaction, every hidden account. The prosecutor displayed a chart showing the millions Van had stolen, including our trust funds. "And finally," the prosecutor said, "we have evidence of the defendant's attempt to destroy evidence by burning down his sister's home." Robin's security footage played on the courtroom screens. Van's distinctive silhouette, pouring gasoline around the house's perimeter. The flash of a lighter. During a brief recess, Quinn whispered, "He's really going away for this, isn't he?" "For a long time," Grace confirmed. The defense called character witnesses, business associates who praised Van's leadership, his philanthropy. But under cross-examination, each one admitted knowledge of his financial irregularities. Then, surprisingly, Van himself took the stand. "My sister paints me as a monster," he began, his voice thick with fake emotion. "But everything I did was for the family. The trust funds, I was investing in our future. Mom's death, she was suffering. I showed mercy. Objection, the prosecutor stood. The defendant is testifying to facts, not in evidence. Sustained. Van's composure cracked. This is ridiculous. I built everything. I carried this family while Reagan played nursemaid and Quinn played socialite. I deserved... Mr. Rivera, the judge warned, control yourself. You want to know what really happened? Van shouted, pointing at me. She manipulated Mom, turned her against me. She's the real criminal here. The judge banged his gavel. Remove the defendant until he can compose himself. As guards led Van out, he lunged toward me. This isn't over. You hear me? I'll appeal. The doors closed on his threats. The jury deliberated for only 2 hours. On the count of first-degree murder, how do you find? Guilty. On the counts of financial fraud and embezzlement? Guilty. On the count of attempted arson? Guilty. The judge's sentence was severe. Life imprisonment without possibility of parole, plus 30 years for the financial crimes. All assets seized. Van stood rigid as the sentence was read, but I saw his hands trembling. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Quinn faced the cameras bravely. Justice was served today. Our mother can rest in peace. Otto shielded me from the chaos, leading me to his car. You okay? I don't know what I am, I admitted. Back at the house, now restored from the fire damage, Robin waited with dinner. I saw the verdict online. How do you feel? Like I can finally breathe, I said, surprising myself with the truth of it. Grace arrived later with papers. The seized assets will be liquidated. It won't recover everything, but you and Quinn will each receive substantial restitution. Quinn studied the documents. What about Van's wife? Their kids? Protected trusts, Grace assured her. They won't suffer for his crimes. As evening fell, I stood in Mom's old room, now cleared of medical equipment and memories of suffering. Otto appeared in the doorway. Stay, I said before he could speak. Not just tonight. Stay. He crossed the room slowly, taking my hand. Are you sure? I'm sure about this. Life's too short for fear. Mom taught me that in the end. Through the window, I watched the sun set on the first day of my new life. One without Van's shadow, without secrets, without guilt. Quinn called up the stairs. Dinner's getting cold. Coming, I replied, squeezing Otto's hand. It was time to start living again. The morning sun streamed through Mom's garden windows as I sorted through the last box of her belongings. Quinn sat cross-legged on the floor beside me, helping organize photos and letters. Remember this? She held up a faded Polaroid of the 3 of us kids at the beach. Before everything got complicated. Before Van got greedy, I corrected, then paused at her flinch. Sorry, I know he's still your brother. He made his choices. She set the photo aside. Just like I made mine, I'm still trying to make up for them. The doorbell rang. Grace with the final paperwork from Van's asset liquidation. Otto let her in, carrying coffee for everyone. The last of the restitution funds have been distributed, Grace announced, spreading documents across the kitchen table. The company's new board has implemented all the recommended safeguards. And Van? Quinn asked quietly. Still maintaining his innocence, but his appeal was denied yesterday. Grace sipped her coffee. His wife filed for divorce this morning. I signed where indicated, then passed the pen to Quinn. What about the trust fund records? Recovered most of them. Your grandfather's original intentions are now legally protected. Any future grandchildren will have secured trusts that can't be consolidated or accessed by anyone else. Otto squeezed my shoulder gently at the mention of future children. We were taking things slow, rebuilding trust, but the possibility hung sweet in the air. The back door opened and Robin entered, carrying a small package. Special delivery from Maria. She thought you should have this. Inside was Mom's old journal, its pages filled with her flowing script. A note fell out. Found this while cleaning the hospice storage. Thought it belonged with family who truly cared. Maria. Quinn read aloud from a random page. Reagan stayed again tonight. My stubborn, beautiful girl. She thinks I don't see her sacrifice, but I see everything. I see who stays. I see who loves. My throat tightened. That's enough. No, Quinn insisted, it's not. We need to hear this. I need to hear this. She continued reading. Van visits with schemes, Quinn with excuses. But Reagan just loves. Simply. Completely. I hope someday she knows how much I treasured that. Robin touched my arm. She knew, dear. That's why she protected you in the end. Speaking of protection, Otto said, the security system's been upgraded. No one's getting in here uninvited again. I walked to the garden, where fresh flowers bloomed where Van's gasoline had once soaked the ground. The others followed. I had something made, Quinn said, unveiling a small stone marker. For the garden. The inscription read, Eleanor's Garden, where love bloomed and stayed. It's perfect, I whispered. Grace checked her watch. I should go. One last thing. Van's daughter called. She'd like to visit sometime if you're open to it. Of course, I said. She's family. The door's always open for those who come with love. As Grace left, Otto started grilling lunch. Quinn and Robin set the patio table, their easy chatter filling the air. The garden bloomed around us, renewed after the fire, just as we were renewed after the storm. I've been thinking, Quinn said, returning from the kitchen with plates. Maybe I could move back? Not here, but nearby. Start fresh. There's a house for sale on my street, Robin offered. Walking distance. You'd leave L.A.? I asked Quinn. L.A. was about being seen. I want to be somewhere I can just be. Otto brought out the food, and we gathered around the table, this makeshift family built from the ashes of the old one. No more secrets, no more lies, just truth and time and healing. A toast, Robin proposed, raising her glass. To Eleanor, who knew exactly what she was doing when she gave this house to the one person who truly loved it. To Mom, Quinn echoed. To staying, Otto added, his eyes meeting mine. I looked around at these people who chose to remain, to rebuild, to love despite everything. The garden bloomed, the house stood strong, and finally, I was exactly where I belonged. To home, I said, and to those who make it one. The wind rustled through Mom's roses, carrying their sweet scent across the patio. Somewhere inside, her journal waited with more words of love. But right here, right now, surrounded by those who chose to stay, I felt her presence more clearly than any written word could capture. This was her real legacy, not the house, not the money, but the love that remained when everything else burned away.
I stood in front of the ornate church mirror, adjusting my maid of honor dress and mentally calculating the exact amount my parents had stolen from my savings account. $127,843. Money I'd earned through years of careful investment and countless late nights building my consulting business. Isn't this perfect? My sister Madison twirled in her designer wedding gown, the one that cost exactly $23,651 of my money. I still can't believe how everything worked out. Meeting James at that charity gala, and now here we are. I forced a smile, remembering the real story of how she'd met my business partner. The story she didn't know. Yes, I replied softly. Everything worked out exactly as planned. 6 months earlier, I'd sat across from my parents at our family's weekly dinner, listening in shock as they casually announced they'd borrowed my savings for Madison's wedding. Honey, you understand, Mom had said, patting my hand. Your sister only gets married once, and James comes from such a good family. We couldn't let her have anything less than perfect. You had no right. I'd managed through clenched teeth. That was my money. Don't be selfish. Dad cut in. Madison needs this. Besides, what were you doing with all that money anyway? It's not like you have anything important to spend it on. I'd looked at Madison, waiting for her to say something, anything. But she just sat there, examining her fresh manicure, a satisfied smile playing on her lips. What they didn't know was that those savings had been earmarked for a crucial business expansion. I'd been planning to buy out our biggest competitor, a deal that would have doubled our market share overnight. I can't believe you're being so dramatic about this, Madison had sighed. It's not like you have a wedding to save for. When was your last date anyway? That night, I'd called James, my business partner, and the only person who knew the full extent of my family's emotional manipulation. They took everything, James. The expansion money, my emergency fund, all of it. His voice had been calm, measured. I might have a solution, but you'll have to trust me completely, and it's going to take time. I trust you, I'd said without hesitation. James and I had built our company from nothing, working 80-hour weeks, surviving on coffee and determination. He was the brother I should have had instead of the sister who'd spent her life taking everything from me. Good, he replied, because I'm about to tell you how we're going to take over your family's company, and it starts with me meeting your sister. Now, watching Madison fuss with her veil, I thought about how perfectly James had played his part. The accidental meeting at the charity gala, the whirlwind romance, the proposal that had made headline news. James was, after all, one of the city's most eligible bachelors. My parents had been ecstatic. Their golden child marrying into serious money. It was everything they dreamed of. If only they knew that James's real value wasn't in his personal wealth, but in his shares of our company, Monarch Consulting. Shares that, combined with mine, would give us controlling interest in Anderson and Sons, my family's century-old business, once the merger papers were signed tomorrow morning. Sarah? Madison's voice pulled me from my thoughts. Earth to Sarah. Mom wants to know if you've got the marriage license. She said she gave it to you for safekeeping. I patted my purse, feeling the weight of the envelope inside. Got it right here. What I didn't mention was that nestled beside it was another envelope, one containing merger documents that would transfer control of Anderson and Sons to Monarch Consulting the moment Madison and James said, "I do." A knock at the door interrupted us. Mom bustled in, already dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. "Oh, my beautiful girls." She hugged Madison carefully, mindful of the expensive dress. Then she turned to me, her smile faltering slightly. "Sarah, dear, couldn't you have done something more with your hair? This is your sister's big day." I touched my elegant chinman, the one that had cost $200 at the best salon in town. "It's fine, Mom." "Well, at least you're not completely overshadowing your sister's moment," she sighed. "Though that dress is a bit much, don't you think?" I glanced down at the designer gown I'd chosen specifically because it was more expensive than Madison's. A small petty revenge, but satisfying nonetheless. "The ceremony starts in 20 minutes, Mom continued. "Sarah, please try not to trip during the procession, and remember to smile. None of those serious business expressions you always wear." After she left, Madison turned to me, her face suddenly serious. "You are happy for me, aren't you, Sarah? I know you and James work together, and maybe you had a little crush on him." I cut her off with a laugh. "Trust me, Madison. James is exactly where he's supposed to be." My phone buzzed. A text from James. "Everything ready?" "All set," I replied. "See you at the altar." Madison was fixing her makeup one last time when Dad came in. "Princess, it's time." He turned to me. Sarah, don't forget your part. Simple and dignified, remember? I nodded, thinking of the other role I'd be playing today, the one that would change everything. As the wedding coordinator lined us up, I felt the weight of both envelopes in my purse. One would make my sister Mrs. James Porter. The other would make me CEO of Anderson and Sons. The organ music began, its triumphant notes filling the massive church. I stepped into line behind the bridesmaids, a small smile playing on my lips. Ready? The coordinator whispered. More than ready. I'd been preparing for this moment for 6 months. The doors opened, and I began my walk down the aisle, past hundreds of guests who had no idea they were about to witness not just a wedding, but a corporate takeover. At the altar, James stood tall and handsome in his tuxedo. He caught my eye and gave me the slightest of nods. Showtime. The ceremony proceeded like a perfectly choreographed dance. Madison floated down the aisle on Dad's arm, guests murmuring appreciatively at her designer gown. In the front row, Mom dabbed her eyes with her handkerchief, the massive diamond rings on her fingers catching the light. Rings bought with profits from the company I was about to take over. When the minister asked for the marriage license, I opened my purse with steady hands. For a moment, I held both envelopes, one containing the license, the other holding the merger documents James had already signed. One would bind my sister in marriage, the other would bind my family's company to mine. I handed over the marriage license, keeping the merger papers close. Their time would come soon enough. Dearly beloved, the minister began, his voice echoing through the church. I watched James's face as he recited his vows, admiring how perfectly he played his role. Not a single person in the cathedral suspected that this wealthy, charming man was about to help me orchestrate the biggest business coup in our city's history. I do, Madison said, her voice trembling with emotion. If only she knew what those words would really set in motion. As James slipped the platinum band onto Madison's finger, I felt my phone vibrate silently in my purse. Right on schedule, our lawyers confirming that everything was in place. At the reception, I stood to deliver my maid of honor speech. The ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton sparkled with expensive decorations, all paid for with my stolen savings. When Madison first met James, I began, my voice carrying across the perfectly arranged tables. She thought she was the luckiest girl in the world. I paused, letting my eyes meet James's. Little did she know just how special their connection would truly be. The crowd chuckled, interpreting my words as sisterly affection. Only James understood their real meaning. As I sat down, Dad stood up, champagne glass in hand. Today isn't just about joining two people in marriage, he'd announced proudly. It's about joining two of the city's most prestigious families, the Andersons and the Porters, a perfect match. I smiled, thinking about how that perfect match would look very different by tomorrow morning. The party was in full swing when my phone buzzed again. The message was from our corporate attorney. Documents filed. Ready when you are. I caught James's eye across the dance floor and gave a subtle nod. He excused himself from Madison's side and made his way to where the senior partners of Anderson and Sons were gathered. Gentlemen, I heard him say, I'd love your advice on something. Could we step into the library for a moment? I watched them follow him out. These men who had spent years dismissing me despite my Harvard MBA and proven track record. These men who had supported my father's decision to make Madison a vice president straight out of college while I built my own company from scratch. 20 minutes later, I entered the library to find exactly what I expected. a room full of pale-faced men holding copies of the merger documents. This is impossible. My father's voice shook as he looked up from the papers. James, what is this? That, I said, stepping forward, is a legally binding merger agreement between Monarch Consulting and Anderson and Sons. One that gives us controlling interest in your company. But you don't have the authority, one of the partners sputtered. The shareholder agreement clearly states that any marriage between the families automatically triggers the merger clause. James finished smoothly. A clause your lawyers insisted on when they learned of my family's wealth. They just didn't know I was already Sarah's business partner. Dad's face had turned an alarming shade of red. You planned this? Both of you? Consider it karma, I said coolly. You took my savings. I'm taking your company. Madison will never forgive you, he threatened. Madison will never know. I corrected him. Unless you want to explain to her how you stole her sister's money to pay for her wedding. How you've been embezzling from the company pension fund to maintain your lifestyle. Oh yes, I added, seeing his expression. We found those records too. The room fell silent except for the distant sounds of the reception. The papers are already filed, James said quietly. The only question is whether you want to handle this transition quietly or make a scene at your daughter's wedding. Dad's hands clenched into fists. Sarah, please. We can work something out. Like how you worked out taking my savings? I asked sweetly. No, Dad. This is happening. The only choice you have is how public you want this to become. One of the partners cleared his throat. Robert, maybe we should discuss this calmly. If what they're saying about the pension fund. Dad's shoulders slumped in defeat. James gathered the signed documents while I stood by the door, watching these powerful men come to terms with their new reality. Oh, and Dad, I said as they filed out. Don't worry about paying me back for the wedding. Consider it a gift, the last one you'll ever get from me. Back in the ballroom, Madison was cutting the massive wedding cake, beaming at the cameras. Mom was showing off the table settings to her friends, bragging about the cost. If they only knew that every crystal glass, every flower arrangement, every perfect detail of this wedding had helped fund their own downfall. I picked up a champagne flute and watched the bubbles rise. By this time tomorrow, I would be CEO of both companies. The empire my grandfather built, that my father nearly destroyed, would be mine. Everything okay? James appeared at my side, his bow tie slightly crooked from the confrontation. Perfect, I replied, straightening his tie. Ready for your honeymoon? He grimaced slightly. 2 weeks in the Maldives with Madison. The things I do for our company. Just think of it as a business investment, I said, raising my glass. To new beginnings. Across the room, Dad was drinking heavily at the bar, his face ashen. Mom was still circulating among the guests, unaware that her world had just shifted on its axis. And Madison? She was exactly where she'd always been, the center of attention, basking in her perfect moment, completely oblivious to the storm about to break. The night was still young, but the real celebration was just beginning. 2 weeks after the wedding, I sat in what had once been my father's office, reviewing the latest financial reports. The view of the city skyline was exactly as I remembered from childhood visits, but everything else had changed. The heavy oak desk where Dad had once dismissed my business ideas was now mine. The wall of photos showing him with celebrities and politicians had been replaced with our company's new vision statement and organizational chart. My phone buzzed. A text from James. Just landed. Heading to the office. Madison's still mad. I'm cutting the honeymoon short for work. I smiled, remembering Madison's Instagram posts from the Maldives. Endless selfies of her living her best life, completely unaware that her new husband had spent most of the trip on conference calls, helping me restructure both companies. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. "Come in." Mom entered, looking smaller somehow without her usual designer outfit and perfectly coiffed hair. "Sarah, we need to talk." I gestured to the chair across from me. The same chair where I'd once sat as Dad lectured me about practical career choices. "How could you do this to your own family?" she demanded, but her voice lacked its usual authority. "Interesting," I said, opening a folder on my desk. "That's exactly what I wondered when I saw these bank statements. Care to explain why you and Dad withdrew $127,843 from my account without permission?" "That was different. It was for your sister's wedding." "No," I corrected her calmly. "It was theft. Just like Dad's creative accounting with the pension fund was theft. The only difference is, I found a legal way to take back what's mine." "By tricking your sister? Using James to what?" "Give her exactly what she wanted. A wealthy husband, a dream wedding, a luxury honeymoon." I leaned forward. "Madison got everything she ever wanted. The fact that it helped me get what I wanted to is just good business." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "Your father hasn't slept in days. He's talking about moving to Florida, selling the house." "The house is company property," I reminded her. "And yes, you'll need to vacate it by the end of the month." "Where are we supposed to go?" "I hear Madison's guest house is quite comfortable, though you might want to hurry. Once she learns about the company, she might not be feeling very generous." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from Madison. "Excuse me," I told Mom. "I need to take this." Mom stood shakily. At the door, she turned back. "We're still family, Sarah." "No," I said softly. "We stopped being family the moment you chose Madison's one perfect day over my entire future." I answered Madison's call on speaker, letting Mom hear as she left. "Sarah." Madison's voice was shrill. "What's going on?" "James is acting weird, saying something about an emergency board meeting. And Dad's not answering his phone." "Don't worry," I said smoothly. "Everything will be explained at the meeting. You should come too. It involves the whole family." 2 hours later, I stood at the head of the conference room table, facing my assembled family and the board of directors. James sat to my right, his expression professionally neutral. "As of this morning," I announced, "the merger between Monarch Consulting and Anderson and Sons is complete. I will be serving as CEO of the combined companies." Madison jumped up. "What? But Daddy, you said I was next in line for CEO." Dad couldn't meet her eyes. James cleared his throat. "Actually, according to the new organizational structure, your position has been eliminated." The color drained from Madison's face as understanding dawned. You married me just to help her take over the company." "The marriage is legal," James said calmly. "And I'll continue to provide for you exactly as agreed in our prenup," which, if you recall, you were too excited to read carefully. Madison turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "My own sister. You ruined everything." "No," I corrected her. "I took back what was mine and built something bigger in the process." "By destroying our family?" I pulled out the bank statements, sliding them across the table. "Our family was destroyed the moment they stole my savings for your wedding. I just decided to stop being the victim and start being the victor." Mr. Anderson, one of the board members interrupted. Given the circumstances with the pension fund, we believe it's best if you announce your retirement immediately. Dad nodded numbly. Madison looked between our parents in confusion. Pension fund? What pension fund? Ask them, I suggested. Ask them about all the creative accounting they did to maintain their lifestyle, to pay for your cars, your clothes, your perfect wedding. The board members began filing out, leaving our family alone in the wreckage of what we'd once been. You'll regret this, Madison spat, grabbing her designer purse. All of it. Actually, I said, I've never been more certain of anything in my life. After they left, James loosened his tie. Well, that went about as expected. I stood by the window, watching my family exit the building below. Mom and Dad walking slowly, shoulders slumped. Madison storming ahead, already on her phone, probably calling her friends to complain about her evil sister. Any regrets? James asked quietly. I thought about years of being second best, of working twice as hard for half the recognition, of having my dreams dismissed and my savings stolen. Just one, I replied. That I didn't do this sooner. 1 year later, I stood in the same spot, but the view was different. Under my leadership, the merged company had doubled its market share. The pension fund had been fully restored, the corporate culture transformed. My phone buzzed with a text from Madison. Heard about the company's success. Ready to talk? I deleted it without responding. Some bridges weren't meant to be rebuilt. James appeared in my doorway. Board meeting in 5. Ready to show them the expansion plans? I gathered my papers, pausing to straighten a new photo on my wall. One showing me and James at the company's last charity gala. Both of us smiling genuinely at the camera. You know what, James? I've never been more ready. Sometimes revenge isn't just about getting even. Sometimes it's about proving that the people who underestimated you were wrong. That the person they dismissed as second best could become the best. And I had proof. 12 stories of prime real estate, 2 thriving companies merged into an empire, and 1 perfect revenge served exactly the way I'd planned it. Madison got her perfect wedding. I got everything else. And that was the best revenge of all. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I lay in my hospital bed, staring at the message on my phone. Sorry, sis. Money's tight, and we can't help with the medical bills. You should have been more careful driving in the rain. Mom and Dad agree. You were on your own with this one. My sister Olivia, who lived in our parents' fully paid guest house and drove a Mercedes they'd gifted her for Christmas, was telling me I was on my own. The same sister whose college tuition I'd helped pay when our parents' investments took a hit in 2008. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the constant beeping of monitors and the throbbing pain in my legs. The doctors said I was lucky. The truck that hit me could have killed me. Instead, I was looking at months of rehabilitation and medical bills that would drain every penny I'd saved. Miss Porter? A nurse poked her head in. Your physical therapy session starts in 10 minutes. Do you have someone coming to help you get there? I shook my head, fighting back tears. My family lived less than 20 minutes away, but they hadn't visited once in the 2 weeks since the accident. The nurse's face softened with sympathy. Don't worry, honey. I'll help you. As she helped me into the wheelchair, I thought about the last conversation I'd had with my parents. It was at Olivia's 32nd birthday party, held at their sprawling Victorian house that had been in our family for generations. They'd been bragging about Olivia's new job at a prestigious law firm. a position she'd gotten through Dad's golf club connections. "Catherine," Mom had said, sipping her champagne, "when are you going to get a real career? This financial consulting business of yours, it's not very stable, is it?" If only they knew that my unstable consulting business had helped me build a substantial investment portfolio. I'd kept my success quiet, remembering how they'd ridiculed my decision to strike out on my own, rather than join Dad's firm. The physical therapy session was grueling. Every movement sent shots of pain through my damaged legs, but I gritted my teeth and pushed through. The therapist, Mike, was encouraging but realistic. "You're doing great, Catherine, but recovery will take time. And it's important to have a support system. I have enough savings." I cut him off. "I'll hire whatever help I need." Back in my room, I opened my laptop, determined to at least review some client files. A news alert caught my eye. Morton Financial, my parents' primary investment firm, was facing a liquidity crisis. Their stock had plummeted 60% in a week. I dug deeper, my analyst instincts kicking in. Morton had made risky bets on the real estate market, leveraging their clients' portfolios to buy up distressed properties. Now those investments were imploding. My phone buzzed. A text from Olivia. "Only did you see the news about Morton? Mom and Dad are freaking out. They might have to sell the house." I set the phone down without responding. The Victorian house had been our grandfather's pride and joy. He'd built the family's wealth from nothing, but always warned us about the dangers of entitlement. "Money shouldn't change who you are," he used to say. "It just reveals it." How right he'd been. Another message popped up, this time from my best friend and fellow analyst. "David, check your email. Found something interesting about Morton's debt structure." I opened his email and started reading. My eyes widened as I absorbed the implications. Morton's mortgage division had been bundling their loans and selling them to private equity firms at a discount. Among their portfolio was my family's house, the mortgage they'd taken out to fund Olivia's law school, and their lavish lifestyle. A plan began forming in my mind. I might be stuck in this hospital bed, but my brain worked just fine, and I knew exactly how to use that Morton financial crisis to my advantage. "David," I typed, "remember that investment fund we discussed starting? I think it's time, and I know exactly what assets we should acquire first." I looked out my hospital window at the setting sun, a grim smile playing on my lips. My family thought I was helpless, a burden they could discard. They had no idea that while I lay here, allegedly broken and abandoned, I was about to become their worst nightmare. My fingers moved swiftly over the keyboard as I outlined my strategy to David. Morton would be desperate to offload their toxic assets. With the right structure and timing, we could acquire their entire mortgage portfolio for pennies on the dollar, including the mortgage on my family's precious Victorian. A nurse came in to check my vitals. "Your blood pressure's a bit high," she noted with concern. "Try to rest." "I will," I assured her. "I just need to finish something important." On my screen, David's reply appeared. "You're sure about this? It's aggressive." I thought about my sister's dismissive text, my parents' absence, the cold calculation with which they'd abandoned me in my hour of need. "I'm sure," I typed back. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about taking control. I closed my laptop and leaned back against the hospital pillows, finally feeling something other than pain and betrayal. I felt powerful. The next morning, I had David bring me every document he could find on Morton Financial's assets. Between physical therapy sessions and doctor's visits, I pored over financial statements, loan documents, and market analyses. Morton's desperation was evident in the numbers. They needed to raise capital fast, and they were willing to sell their loan portfolios at steep discounts to do it. I called in every favor, contacted every industry connection I'd made over the years. My hospital room became my war room, with David acting as my eyes and ears in the financial world. Morton starting to approach potential buyers. He reported during one of his daily visits. They're trying to keep it quiet, but word's getting out. I nodded, scrolling through the latest projections on my laptop. Have our LLC ready. Everything needs to be in place when they start accepting bids. Catherine, David hesitated. Your family, they still haven't visited? No, I said shortly. And soon they'll wish they had. My phone lit up with another text from Olivia. Dad's talking about declaring bankruptcy. This is a nightmare. I left it unanswered, just like all her previous messages. Instead, I focused on the document David had brought me, a preliminary term sheet for Morton's distressed asset sale. The pieces were falling into place. While my family worried about losing their precious house, I was preparing to become their anonymous creditor. Sometimes recovery takes more than just physical healing. Sometimes it requires rebuilding yourself into someone stronger, someone who can never be abandoned or betrayed again. And as I lay in that hospital bed, surrounded by financial documents and powered by determination, I was doing exactly that. 2 months after the accident, I sat in my wheelchair in a sleek downtown office, watching as David finalized our bid for Morton Financial's distressed assets. My legs were healing, but my heart had hardened into something unbreakable. Phoenix Capital Management, I murmured, reading the name on our newly registered investment firm's documents. Rising from the ashes, David looked up from his computer. Final offers ready. $85 million for their entire mortgage portfolio. About 30 cents on the dollar. I nodded, remembering the conversation I'd overheard between 2 nurses last week. They'd been discussing my sister Olivia's appearance on local news, speaking as a concerned citizen about Morton Financial's collapse. She'd been wearing the diamond necklace our parents gave her for passing the bar exam. The same week they told me they couldn't help with my student loans. Send it, I said. While we waited for Morton's response, I focused on my recovery. Physical therapy was still excruciating, but I channeled every stab of pain into determination. The doctors were amazed by my progress. Whatever's driving you, Mike, my therapist, said during one particularly tough session, it's working. If he only knew. The call from Morton came on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. They accepted our bid with minimal negotiation. Desperation had made them eager. Within hours, Phoenix Capital Management became the proud owner of over 500 mortgages, including the one on my family's Victorian. I celebrated that night with a painkiller and a spreadsheet, meticulously reviewing each loan in our newly acquired portfolio. Most would be restructured or sold off, but some would receive special attention. The next morning, my phone exploded with messages. Morton had announced the sale of their mortgage division to an anonymous investment firm. My family was panicking. Mom, they sold our mortgage. What if the new company raises our rates? Olivia, Dad's meeting with bankruptcy lawyers tomorrow. This is insane. Dad, Catherine, I know we haven't been there for you, but I need your financial expertise. Call me. I deleted them all without responding. David stopped by later with takeout and updates. The transfer's complete. You now officially own your family's debt. I took a bite of lo mein, savoring both the taste and the moment. Have our management company Send out the standard notification letters. And David, make sure my family's includes the new, adjusted terms. You're really going to do it. They made their choice when they abandoned me, I said, my voice steady. Now it's my turn to make mine. The next week, as I graduated from wheelchair to walker, my family received their letter from Phoenix Capital Management. Their mortgage rate was being adjusted to the maximum legally allowable amount, effectively doubling their monthly payment. The explosion was immediate. Catherine, Olivia burst into my hospital room unannounced, waving the letter. You have to help us figure this out. Mom's having anxiety attacks. Dad can't sleep. I looked at her designer purse, her perfect manicure, her face flushed with self-righteous concern. I thought I wasn't your problem. She flinched. That's not fair. We were dealing with our own crisis. While I was dealing with paralysis, I cut in. Alone. We're family, she protested. Are we? Because family doesn't abandon each other in hospitals. Family doesn't ignore calls for help. Family shows up. Tears welled in her eyes. What happened to you? You change. I smiled coldly. No, I just stopped accepting less than I deserve. After she left, I had David send another letter to my parents. This one detailed Phoenix's new policy on late payments. There would be no grace period, no exceptions. That evening, my father called. Catherine, please. We need your help understanding these financial terms. Maybe you could talk to the new company, explain our situation, like you explained my situation to them when I needed help. Silence. Then, we made a mistake. We see that now. No, I said quietly. You're only seeing your own desperation. There's a difference. I hung up and opened my laptop, reviewing Phoenix's latest acquisitions. We'd expanded beyond Morton's portfolio, snapping up distressed debt across the city. Every deal made us stronger, more influential. The physical therapist had me practicing with a cane now. Each step was a victory, a reminder that I wasn't the helpless victim my family had abandoned. Your recovery is remarkable, Dr. Chin said during my checkup. Most patients take much longer to reach this stage. I didn't tell her that rage could be as powerful a motivator as physical therapy. The next day, David brought more news. My parents had tried to refinance their mortgage, approaching every bank in town. They were denied, he reported. Their credits shot from the Morton collapse. I nodded, unsurprised. And the house? They've listed it for sale. No takers yet. The Victorian had been in our family for 3 generations. My grandfather had bought it with his first real estate profits, turning it from a rundown property into a symbol of success. Now it would become a symbol of something else, the price of betrayal. My phone buzzed, with a text from Mom. We're having a family meeting tonight about the house. Please come. We need you. I stared at the message, remembering all the unanswered calls I'd made from my hospital bed. All the nights I'd laid awake, fighting pain and loneliness, while they lived their lives as if I didn't exist. Can't make it, I texted back. I have a meeting with my investment advisors. Let them wonder about that. Let them speculate about my finances while their own crumbled. Because soon they would learn just how expensive abandonment could be. That night, I sat in my apartment. I checked out of the hospital last week, looking at old family photos. Happy faces smiled back at me, preserving moments when I'd believed in unconditional love and family loyalty. You were right, Grandpa, I whispered to his image. Money doesn't change people, it reveals them. My laptop chimed with an email notification. David had sent the latest report on Phoenix Holdings. Our company had grown exponentially, attracting attention from major players in the finance world. But I wasn't interested in their attention. I was focused on one particular asset, a Victorian house that would soon teach my family the true meaning of consequences. 3 months after Phoenix Capital acquired my family's mortgage, I stood without assistance in my office on the 40th floor of downtown's most prestigious building, looking out at the city below. My cane rested against the desk, rarely needed now, except on particularly tiring days. My phone buzzed, a text from David. "They're here." I smoothed my designer suit, a small smile playing on my lips. "Send them up." Minutes later, my family walked into my office. Their shocked expressions as they took in the luxurious space, the stunning view, and my position behind the massive desk were almost worth every painful step of my recovery. "Catherine?" Mom's voice wavered. This is your office. Welcome to Phoenix Capital Management," I said calmly. "Please, sit down." They sank into the leather chairs facing my desk. Dad looked older than I remembered, his face lined with worry. Olivia had lost her polished shine, her designer clothes replaced by something more modest. Mom's hands trembled as she clutched her purse. "You work here?" Olivia asked, her eyes darting around the office. "As what?" "Not exactly." I pressed a button on my desk, and the wall behind me lit up with the Phoenix Capital logo. "I own it." The silence that followed was deafening. That's impossible," Dad finally managed. "Phoenix Capital is the company that bought our mortgage. They're worth hundreds of millions. The latest valuation puts us at just over $1 billion. I kept my voice professionally detached. "Would you like to see the paperwork?" Mom started crying. Not the elegant tears she shed at charity galas, but ugly, racking sobs. All this time, while we were drowning in debt. "You were successful?" I finished for her. "Yes. No thanks to any of you." "Why didn't you tell us?" Olivia demanded. "Why did you let us suffer?" I leaned forward, my hands flat on the desk. "Let you suffer? Like you let me suffer in that hospital, alone in pain, wondering why my family hadn't bothered to visit. We were dealing with our own crisis," Dad protested weakly. "No," I cut him off. "You were dealing with the consequences of your own choices. The risky investments, the lavish spending, the constant need to maintain appearances. And when I needed you most, you decided I wasn't worth the inconvenience." I pulled out a folder and laid 3 documents on the desk. Option 1. I foreclose on the house immediately. You have 30 days to vacate. Dad's face went pale. Option 2. You keep the house, but with the current terms. Double payments, no grace period, no exceptions. Mom's sobs grew louder. Option 3. I slid the final document forward. You sign the house over to me. I let you stay as tenants, with reasonable rent, but you acknowledge that you've lost any claim to our grandfather's legacy. "You're enjoying this," Olivia accused, her voice bitter. "You're punishing us." "No," I said quietly. "I'm teaching you what it feels like to be abandoned by family." I stood up, walking to the window without my cane. "You know what got me through those weeks in the hospital? Not the pain medication, not the physical therapy. It was understanding that I had to become someone who could never be hurt like that again." "Catherine, please," Mom whispered. "We're sorry. We were wrong. Sorry because you mean it, or sorry because I hold your fate in my hands?" No one answered. I turned back to face them. "You have 24 hours to decide. Choose wisely." After they left, David came in. You okay? I nodded, watching their car pull away 40 stories below. Have the papers ready for whatever they choose. And if they go public, try to challenge your ownership? Then I released the documents showing how they mismanaged Grandpa's trust, how they used Olivia's law school as an excuse to mortgage a fully paid house, how they chose luxury over family. The next day, exactly 23 hours later, they returned with the signed option 3 documents. No one spoke as I reviewed the paperwork, my signature joining theirs in crisp black ink. The rental agreement will arrive tomorrow, I said, closing the folder. I suggest you read it carefully. Is this it? Olivia asked, her voice small. Are we just done as a family? I met her eyes, seeing for the first time how much the past months had changed her. The entitlement was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like understanding. Family, I said softly, isn't about shared DNA or shared property. It's about being there when it matters most. You taught me that. And there's no going back. Mom's question carried all the weight of her regret. I thought about the lonely hospital nights, the unanswered calls, the casual cruelty of their abandonment. Then I thought about Grandpa's words about money revealing true character. Going back? No, but forward. That depends on you. They left quietly, the victory I'd imagined feeling more hollow than I'd expected. But as I watched the sun set over the city, I knew I'd done what was necessary, not for revenge, but for justice. Not to hurt them, but to teach them. Money hadn't changed me. It had revealed me. Revealed a strength I never knew I had. 1 year later, I stood in front of the Victorian, its restored grandeur a testament to the renovations I'd overseen. My family still lived there, paying their rent on time, learning slowly what it meant to live within their means. Olivia had quit her prestigious law firm to work at a nonprofit. Mom had started volunteering at the hospital where I'd recovered. Dad had finally retired, spending his days restoring classic cars instead of chasing status. They weren't perfect. Our relationship wasn't healed. But they were changing, and maybe that was enough. Miss Porter? My assistant's voice came through my phone. Your 3 o'clock is waiting. The investors are very interested in Phoenix expansion plans. On my way, I replied, taking one last look at the house. I didn't need the cane anymore. My legs had healed stronger than before, and so had I. As I drove away, I thought about how life's worst moments can become our greatest teachers. My family had abandoned me, but in doing so, they'd forced me to become unbreakable. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about becoming someone who can never be broken again. And I had succeeded at both. The email from CEO Marcus Bradford sat in my inbox like a ticking bomb. Sarah, we need to discuss your sister's position at the company. My office, 9 a.m. tomorrow. I stared at those words until they blurred, my coffee growing cold, beside my keyboard. Emma and I had always been inseparable, identical twins who finished each other's sentences, shared every secret, and even ended up at the same company. Now, as Chief Risk Officer at Bradford Financial, I was being asked to evaluate my own sister's performance. The morning traffic crawled through Manhattan's streets as my mind raced through possibilities. Emma had risen quickly through the trading division, making a name for herself, with consistently high returns. Sure, there had been whispers about her aggressive strategies, but nothing concrete. Nothing that should have caught the CEO's attention. Marcus's corner office commanded a view of Central Park, the autumn leaves creating a canvas of red and gold below. He gestured for me to sit, his expression grave. Sarah, I'll be direct. The board has concerns about Emma's trading activities. The numbers don't add up. We need you to conduct a thorough audit and prepare termination papers if necessary. My throat tightened. Sir, given our relationship, wouldn't another officer be more appropriate? He shook his head. You're the most qualified person in risk management. More importantly, you're known for your integrity. The board trusts you to be objective, family or not. I left his office feeling like I was drowning. In the elevator, I caught my reflection. The same dark hair and green eyes as Emma. But today the similarities felt like a curse. How could I investigate my own twin? Back at my desk, I began pulling Emma's trading records. Everything looked perfect on the surface. Consistent profits, well-documented strategies, detailed reports. Too perfect, perhaps. I dug deeper, cross-referencing timestamps, comparing market data, looking for patterns that others might have missed. That's when I found the first discrepancy. A series of trades executed milliseconds apart, each one small enough to fly under regulatory radar, but together they painted a troubling picture. I expanded my search, going back months, then years. My hands trembled as I compiled the data. This wasn't just aggressive trading, this was systematic fraud. Complex algorithms disguised as normal market activities. Phantom trades that existed only on paper. And somewhere in all of this, $12 million that couldn't be accounted for. Working late? Emma's voice made me jump. She stood in my office doorway, elegant in her designer suit, wearing the confident smile that had helped her charm clients and colleagues alike. Just catching up on some reports, I said, carefully closing the files on my screen. You? Closed another big deal today. She perched on the edge of my desk, just as she used to sit on my bed during our late-night talks growing up. The clients are ecstatic. Marcus will have to consider me for the director position now. I studied her face, my face, essentially, looking for any sign of guilt or worry. There was none, just the same self-assured expression she'd worn since we were kids when she convinced me to switch places for exams or cover for her sneaking out. That's great, I managed. Hey, want to grab dinner this weekend? We haven't really talked lately. Can't. Flying to Aspen with James. She checked her watch. A Patek Philippe that probably cost more than my annual salary. Speaking of which, I should head out. Don't work too hard, sis. After she left, I sat in the darkening office, my mind spinning. The sister I thought I knew everything about was now a stranger. The same person who'd held my hand through our parents' divorce, who'd been my constant ally in a world that often struggled to tell us apart, had been orchestrating a massive financial fraud right under my nose. I pulled up the company's ethics policy on my screen, the words blurring as tears threatened to fall. As chief risk officer, my duty was clear, but as a sister, the weight of my discovery pressed down like a physical thing, making it hard to breathe. My phone buzzed, a text from Emma. Hey, almost forgot. Can you sign off on those key 3 risk assessments? Need them for a client meeting tomorrow. Love you. The casual request felt like a mockery now. How many other times had I signed documents without questioning her? Had my trust in her made me complicit? I opened my personal laptop and began documenting everything I'd found, creating copies and securing them outside the company's servers. If I was going to do this, I needed to be thorough. No one could accuse me of acting out of jealousy or spite. The night deepened outside my window, lights twinkling across the city like stars. In 48 hours, there would be a board meeting where Emma would present her latest trading strategies. She didn't know that I'd also be presenting, showing exactly how those strategies had been used to perpetrate a massive fraud. My twin sister, my other half, had built her success on lies, and now I had to decide: family loyalty or professional integrity, blood ties or legal obligations. As I gathered my things to leave, a photo on my desk caught my eye. Emma and me at our college graduation, arms around each other, identical smiles beaming at the camera. I turned it face down, unable to bear those smiling faces, and walked out into the night. The next morning, I arrived early, determined to gather final proof before the board meeting. The office was quiet, just cleaning staff, and a few early risers. I logged into the system, ready to compile my findings into a presentation. But something was wrong. Files were missing. Trading records I'd flagged were altered. The evidence of fraud was being systematically erased. My heart raced as I checked access logs. Multiple logins from my credentials, times when I knew I hadn't been at my computer. Then I remembered. Emma and I had shared everything growing up, including passwords, a habit we'd never quite broken. She knew. Somehow, she knew I was investigating her. As if summoned by my thoughts, a message popped up on my screen. Storage room. Now, we need to talk. I stood on shaky legs, straightening my jacket like armor. The storage room had been our secret meeting spot since we both started at the company, a place for sisterly gossip and support during tough days. Now it felt like walking into a trap. Emma was already there, her expression unreadable in the dim light. For a moment, we just stared at each other, mirror images caught in an impossible situation. "Why?" I finally asked. "Why did you do it?" She smiled, but it wasn't the warm smile I'd grown up with. This was something colder, more calculated. "Oh, Sarah, always so righteous, so by the book. Did you really think you were the only one who could figure it out?" "I have to report this," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "You know that." "Do I?" She stepped closer. "Think carefully, sister dear. Your credentials are all over these transactions. Who's going to believe you didn't help me? That you didn't know all along?" The implication hit me like a physical blow. She'd used my trust, my access, my signature to cover her tracks. If this came out, we'd both go down. She must have seen the realization on my face because her expression softened. "It doesn't have to be this way. Help me clean this up, and we both win. The board meeting is tomorrow. One signature from you clearing my trades, and this all goes away." I backed away from her, my twin, my sister, this stranger wearing my face. "You really think I'd help you cover this up?" "Family first," she said, using the words our mother had drilled into us since childhood. "We're twins, Sarah, two halves of the same whole. You really want to destroy that?" I turned and walked out, her words following me like shadows. Back at my desk, I stared at my blank screen, mind racing. The evidence was gone, erased or altered beyond recovery. Without proof, it would be my word against hers. And she was right. My credentials were tangled up in everything. Any investigation would implicate me too. But as I sat there, a memory surfaced. Something Grandma had told us when we were little, after catching Emma blaming me for a broken vase. The truth always finds a way out, dear ones. Always. I opened my email and began to type. "Mr. Bradford, regarding tomorrow's board meeting." The first rays of dawn were breaking over the city, painting the sky in shades of promise and warning. In a few hours, I would walk into that boardroom and change everything. But first, I had work to do. The morning of the board meeting, I arrived at Bradford Financial 2 hours early. The sky was still dark, the office floors eerily quiet, except for the hum of computers and the occasional cleaning staff member. I had work to do before everyone arrived. Last night, after Emma's threat in the storage room, I'd remembered something crucial. In my first month as Chief Risk Officer, I'd implemented a shadow backup system, a secure, encrypted server that automatically mirrored all trading data. It was a precaution I'd insisted on after a major bank lost millions in a data crash. Emma didn't know about it. Nobody did, except the IT director who'd helped set it up. My hands trembled slightly as I entered the complex series of passwords. If Emma had somehow found this too. But no, the files were there. Every transaction, every altered record, every fraudulent trade, all preserved in their original form. Working early? I jumped at the voice. Marcus Bradford stood in my office doorway, looking impeccable in a charcoal suit despite the early hour. "Sir, I need to show you something before the meeting." For the next hour, I walked him through what I'd found. The complex web of fraudulent trades, the manipulated timestamps, the shell companies Emma had created to hide the money trail. His face grew increasingly grave as he studied the evidence. 12 million, he finally said, running a hand through his silver hair. Right under our noses. And you're certain about this? I handed him a USB drive. Everything's here, including proof that my login credentials were used without my knowledge. He pocketed the drive, his expression unreadable. "The board meets in an hour. Be ready." By 9, the tension in the boardroom was palpable. 14 people sat around the massive mahogany table, all focused on their tablets where the meeting agenda glowed. Emma sat near the head of the table, looking confident in a navy Armani suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. When she caught my eye, she gave me a small smile. My stomach churned. Did she really think I would back down? That I would help her cover this up. Marcus called the meeting to order. "Before we begin, there's been a development regarding the trading division's performance reports." Emma's smile widened as she reached for her presentation materials. "Yes, I have the quarterly numbers right here." "Not those reports." Marcus cut in. His voice was steel. "Sarah, please proceed." I stood, my legs steadier than I expected. With a click of my remote, the room's screens lit up with transaction records, bank transfers, and damning evidence that I'd reconstructed from the backup server. Over the past 18 months, I began, my voice clear in the hushed room. A sophisticated fraud scheme has been operating within our trading division. Using manipulated algorithms and phantom trades, approximately $12 million has been diverted through a network of shell companies. Emma's face went from confident to confused to pale as I continued my presentation. I showed the board everything. The fake trades, the altered timestamps, the money trail that led to offshore accounts. "This is ridiculous," Emma interrupted, standing up so abruptly her chair rolled backward. "These are legitimate trades. Sarah's just jealous because I've outperformed every metric." "Sit down, Miss Sullivan," Marcus ordered. "Your credentials were used to access and alter company records at 3 a.m. this morning. Care to explain that?" Emma's eyes darted to me, a flash of betrayal crossing her face. I was home asleep. Someone must have hacked. "We have security footage," I said quietly, "and the original records from a secure backup server you didn't know about." The color drained from her face. She sank back into her chair, her perfectly manicured hands gripping the armrests. Given the severity of these allegations, Marcus continued, I've already contacted the SEC and our external auditors. Ms. Sullivan, please surrender your company ID and devices. Security will escort you out. You can't do this. Emma's voice shook. Sarah, tell them. Tell them you helped me. Your credentials are all over these trades. I met her desperate gaze. No, Emma, I didn't help you. You stole my passwords, used my trust, and tried to frame me when you got caught. 2 security guards appeared at the boardroom doors. Emma's face contorted with rage as she stood. Family first, remember? We're supposed to protect each other. I am protecting you, I said softly. From continuing down this path, from becoming someone who thinks it's okay to steal and lie and betray the people closest to them. She laughed, a harsh sound that didn't match her elegant appearance. You self-righteous bitch. You really think you're better than me? That you're doing the right thing? Watch your back, sister dear. This isn't over. As security led her out, I remained standing, my presentation still glowing on the screens around us. The board members whispered among themselves, shooting glances between me and the door where my twin had just exited. Marcus cleared his throat. Given the circumstances, we'll need to do a complete audit of all trading activities. Sarah, I want you to lead the investigation team. And, thank you. I know how difficult this must have been. I nodded, unable to speak. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of action items and next steps. When it finally ended, I walked to my office on shaky legs and closed the door. On my desk, the face-down photo from our graduation caught my eye. I picked it up, studying our identical smiles, remembering how simple everything had seemed back then. When had Emma changed? Or had she always been this way, and I just hadn't wanted to see it? My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You chose your job over your own twin. Hope you can live with yourself. I blocked the number, but Emma's words echoed in my mind. Had I done the right thing? The moral thing, yes. The legal thing, absolutely. But family was supposed to be different. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. It was Lisa from HR, looking apologetic. Sarah? We need you to sign some paperwork regarding the investigation. I followed her to a conference room where several thick folders awaited my signature. Each page felt heavier than the last. Documentation of my sister's crimes, written in cold, official language. As I signed the final page, my phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Check your email, sis. Remember that joint account we opened in college? Guess whose name is on all the transfers? My blood ran cold. I'd forgotten about that account. We'd opened it together for spring break savings, sharing the login like we shared everything else. Had she used it for the stolen money? Racing back to my office, I pulled up my email. There it was. Bank statements showing transfers from our joint account to known shell companies. My name, clear as day, on every transaction. Emma's final trap. Even as she was being caught, she'd made sure I couldn't escape unscathed. I stared at my computer screen, watching as my carefully constructed world began to crumble. The investigation I'd started was about to become much more complicated. And somewhere out there, my twin sister was smiling. 3 days after Emma's dramatic exit from Bradford Financial, I sat in my apartment surrounded by bank statements, old emails, and a growing sense of dread. The joint account she'd mentioned wasn't just a spring break savings account anymore. It had become a complex web of transactions that seemed designed to implicate me in her fraud. My phone rang. Marcus Bradford's number. My hand shook slightly as I answered. Sarah, the FBI's forensic team found something interesting. His voice was carefully neutral. Care to explain why your name is on transfers totaling over $2 million? I closed my eyes, feeling the walls closing in. Sir, that account, it's complicated. Emma and I opened it in college. I haven't used it in years, but we never closed it. Come to the office. Now, bring any documentation you have. The drive to Bradford Financial felt like heading to my own execution. The morning sun glinted off the building's glass facade, a stark contrast to the darkness I felt inside. In the lobby, 2 FBI agents waited with Marcus. Ms. Sullivan. The female agent stepped forward. I'm Agent Carter. We need to discuss some financial records. The next 4 hours were grueling. Every transaction, every password change, every login was scrutinized. I explained the history of the joint account, provided old emails showing I hadn't accessed it in years, handed over my personal bank statements proving I hadn't received any stolen funds. There's something else, Agent Carter said, sliding a document across the table. We found this in your sister's apartment. It was a letter, dated 3 years ago, in what appeared to be my handwriting. In it, I detailed plans to manipulate trading algorithms and divert funds. A perfect piece of evidence implicating me as the mastermind. That's not my signature, I said, studying the letter. Emma and I used to forge each other's handwriting as kids. We made it into a game, seeing who could do it better. A game that's now being used against you, Marcus observed grimly. Agent Carter leaned forward. Miss Sullivan, we need you to help us understand your sister's methods. How she thinks, how she plans. You're our best chance at tracking down the missing millions. I looked at the fake letter again, remembering all the times Emma and I had cockered for each other growing up. But this wasn't about switching places for a math test anymore. This was serious fraud, and she tried to drag me down with her. Okay, I said. I'll help. But first, there's something you need to see. I pulled out my laptop and opened an encrypted folder labeled Twin Tricks, a detailed record of every time Emma had impersonated me over the years. Every forged signature, every switched identity, every borrowed password. I'd started keeping track in college, not out of suspicion, but because I was amazed at how often we got away with it. This is thorough, Agent Carter muttered, scrolling through the files. Emma thinks she knows all my secrets, I said, but she forgot that I know all of hers too. Over the next week, I worked with the FBI team, helping them understand Emma's patterns, her favorite hiding spots for money, her methods for covering her tracks, the ways she manipulated people and systems. Then came the breakthrough. The money's in Singapore, I told Agent Carter, pointing to a series of transactions. Every summer growing up, we played Monopoly with our grandfather. Emma always hid her money under the Singapore property card. She thought it was lucky. Within hours, the FBI had frozen accounts at 3 Singapore banks. $9 million of the stolen $12 million was recovered. Emma had been tracked to a luxury hotel in Bangkok, preparing to disappear with the remaining funds. The arrest made international news. Twin sisters in Wall Street fraud drama, the headlines screamed. Photos of us side by side, in court, at work, at our graduation, splashed across financial websites and newspapers. I watched the coverage from my office, where I'd been cleared of any wrongdoing. The documentation I'd kept, combined with the evidence from the shadow backup server, had protected me from Emma's attempts to share the blame. Then came the text I'd been dreading, Mom wants to see you. Hospital. Room 318. Our mother had been admitted with chest pains after Emma's arrest. I hadn't visited, couldn't face her disappointment. But now, the hospital corridor seemed endless. In room 318, Mom lay pale against white sheets, looking older than her 60 years. Sarah. Her voice was weak. Why didn't you protect her? I sat in the hard plastic chair beside her bed. Mom, Emma stole $12 million. She tried to frame me for it. How was I supposed to protect her from that? You're twins. You're supposed to look out for each other. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Now one of my daughters is going to prison. And the other daughter? I asked quietly. The one who did the right thing. What about her? Mom turned her face away. Just go. I stood, my own tears threatening to fall. At the door, I paused. You know what, Mom? Emma chose this path. She chose to steal, to lie, to betray everyone who trusted her, including me, especially me. I didn't put her in prison. She did that to herself. 2 months later, I sat in a federal courthouse, watching as Emma was sentenced to 15 years for fraud and money laundering. She pleaded guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. When they led her away, she turned to look at me. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the sister I'd grown up with, the other half of my whole. Then her expression hardened, and she was gone. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. Sarah, how does it feel to send your twin sister to prison? Do you regret turning her in? Will you ever forgive her? I pushed through them to where Marcus waited by a company car. Ready to go back to work? He asked. I nodded. The board had named me head of global risk management, with a mandate to strengthen our fraud prevention systems. My first project? Implementing the shadow backup server across all divisions. That evening, I returned to my apartment and finally unpacked the box of family photos I'd hidden away after Emma's arrest. Each image told a story. Birthdays, holidays, graduations. 2 identical girls growing into 2 very different women. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. My heart stopped until I read it. Ms. Sullivan, this is Agent Carter. Final recovery complete. All stolen funds returned to Bradford Financial. Thought you'd want to know. I picked up the graduation photo I'd kept face down for so long. 2 smiling faces, 2 identical futures full of promise. Emma had chosen her path, and I had chosen mine. Opening my laptop, I began typing my weekly risk management report. Tomorrow, I would walk into Bradford Financial not as Emma's twin, not as the woman who uncovered a massive fraud, but simply as Sarah Sullivan, head of global risk management. And that was enough. My phone buzzed again. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. Some relationships, like some investments, weren't worth the risk anymore. Outside my window, the city lights twinkled like stars, each one a reminder that sometimes the hardest choices are the right ones. I had lost my twin, my mirror image, my other half. But I had kept something more valuable, my integrity. And in the end, that was the only reflection that mattered. My father always said money was the only measure of a man's worth. On the day I left home, he made sure to demonstrate exactly how little he thought I was worth. Here's $100, he sneered, throwing the bills at my feet. That's all a failure like you deserves. I was 22, fresh out of college with an engineering degree my parents hadn't bothered to attend the ceremony for. Standing in our expansive living room, my single suitcase packed with everything I owned. I watched the bills flutter to the marble floor like fallen leaves. The Harrison family fortune loomed around us. Crystal chandeliers, antique furniture, priceless art, all of it screaming old money and older pride. For generations, we'd been investment bankers, each son following his father into the prestigious halls of Harrison and Sons Investment Group. Until me. Engineering. My father had spat when I declared my major. Engineers are glorified mechanics. No son of mine will waste his life tinkering with machines. But I saw something they didn't. While they were counting their millions in traditional investments, I recognized that the future belonged to technology. The next great fortunes wouldn't be made in mahogany-paneled investment offices. They'd be built in garages and labs by people who understood how to merge innovation with opportunity. My mother stood by the grand staircase, martini in hand at barely noon. "James, darling, there's still time to fix this. Come back to the firm. Your father can smooth things over with the board." I looked at her, really looked at her, seeing the practiced smile that had never quite reached her eyes. Growing up, I'd watched her measure her worth by the size of her diamond rings, each one larger than the last, as if trying to fill some void that kept expanding. "No, Mother, I'm done trying to be what you want." My father's face turned that dangerous shade of red I'd grown up fearing. "Then get out. You're no longer a Harrison. The trust fund, the connections, the legacy, you're throwing it all away for some foolish dream." I bent down and picked up the $100. The bills were crisp, new. He'd probably had his assistant get them from the bank specifically for this moment of theatrical cruelty. "Keep the trust fund," I said, tucking the bills into my wallet. "I'll build something of my own." My father laughed, the sound echoing off the high ceilings. "You? Build something? You can barely dress yourself properly." He gestured at my simple button-down shirt and slacks, so different from his custom-tailored suit. "Without the Harrison name, you're nothing." Those words would echo in my mind for years to come, driving me through countless sleepless nights and impossible challenges. But in that moment, I just smiled. "Watch me." I walked out of that mansion with $100, a suitcase, and an engineering degree they thought was worthless. My childhood home's enormous iron gates closed behind me with a final, dramatic clang. Standing on the sidewalk, I realized I had no car. It was in my father's name. No place to live. The apartment near college had been paid for by the trust fund, and exactly $100 to my name. But I had something they didn't understand, a vision of the future and the skills to build it. I walked to the bus station, bought a $40 ticket to Silicon Valley, and used another $10 on a burger and fries. Sitting in that greasy diner, watching buses come and go, I opened my notebook and wrote 3 promises to myself. I would never use the Harrison name for gain. I would build something that would change the world. When I returned, it would be on my own terms. $50 left. Not enough to rent a place, barely enough to eat for a few days. But I had my laptop, my degree, and most importantly, an idea that had been forming in my mind throughout college. The world was rapidly moving toward renewable energy, but there was a critical problem no one had solved: storage. Solar and wind power were becoming cheaper, but batteries remained inefficient and expensive. I had developed a theoretical design for a new type of energy storage system, one that could revolutionize the entire industry. The problem was, building it would take millions in funding, years of research, and resources I didn't have. My professors had called the idea brilliant but impractical. My father had called it delusional. I called it my future. As my bus pulled away from the station, I watched my hometown disappear into the darkness. I'd spent 22 years trying to be the son they wanted. Now it was time to become the man I was meant to be. Little did I know that this $100 journey was the beginning of a story that would reshape the entire energy industry. In 10 years, I would build a company worth billions, revolutionize how the world stored and used energy, and return home not as the prodigal son, but as someone they never imagined I could become. But first, I had to survive Silicon Valley with $50 and a dream that wouldn't die. Silicon Valley wasn't the gleaming tech paradise I'd imagined. My first night, I slept on a bench in a park in Palo Alto, using my laptop bag as a pillow and my jacket as a blanket. By morning, my $50 had become $30 after buying a cup of coffee and a bagel at a local cafe. But that cafe changed everything. "You're going to get robbed sleeping out there," the barista said, watching me try to stretch my coffee for hours while using their Wi-Fi. Her name was Maya, and instead of kicking me out, she offered me a deal. Help fix their constantly breaking espresso machine, and I could sleep in the storage room after hours. I fixed their machine in 20 minutes. The owner was so impressed, he offered me a part-time job doing maintenance work. Just like that, I had income and a place to sleep, even if that place was a room full of coffee beans and paper cups. During days, I worked at the cafe. During nights, I refined my energy storage designs, using the cafe's Wi-Fi to research patents and technology trends. Maya would sometimes bring me leftover pastries, peek at my complex diagrams, and ask questions that actually helped me clarify my thinking. "So basically, you're building a better battery?" she asked one night. "Not exactly," I explained, showing her my sketches. "Traditional batteries waste too much energy during storage and transfer. My design uses a new type of molecular structure that could store energy at almost 100% efficiency." She stared at the diagrams. "And why isn't anyone else doing this?" "Because it's theoretically impossible," I grinned. "But I think I found a way." 3 months of cafe work gave me enough savings to rent a tiny room in a shared house with 5 other tech dreamers. It wasn't much, but it had a desk where I could work. I also started freelancing as a technical consultant, helping local startups with engineering problems. That's how I met David Chen. "Your solution for our power management issue saved us months of work," he said after I'd helped his startup fix a critical hardware problem. "What else are you working on?" I hesitated, then decided to take a chance. I showed him my energy storage designs. David was silent for a long time, staring at my detailed technical specifications. Finally, he looked up. "This could change everything, but you'll need serious funding to build a prototype." I know. I didn't tell him about my family's wealth, about the trust fund I'd walked away from. "I'm working on it." David proved to be more than just another client. He introduced me to Dr. Sarah Wong, a leading researcher in molecular engineering at Stanford. She spent 6 hours grilling me about my designs, trying to find flaws in my theories. "It's ambitious," she finally said. "Maybe impossible. But if it works," she paused. "I have some connections at Berkeley's Energy Research Center. Would you be interested in using their lab facilities?" Would I be interested in accessing one of the world's top research facilities? Yes, I managed to say calmly. I would. For the next year, I worked 4 jobs: cafe maintenance in the mornings, freelance consulting during the day, research at Berkeley's labs in the evenings, and refining my designs late into the night. I lived on energy drinks and determination. Then came the breakthrough. It happened at 3 a.m. in the Berkeley lab. I'd been testing different molecular configurations for weeks, trying to find the perfect structure for energy storage. When the test results came back, I checked them 3 times because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It worked. The prototype stored energy at 98.7% efficiency, nearly perfect energy transfer, something that was supposed to be impossible. Dr. Wang verified my results herself. "This isn't just a breakthrough," she said, staring at the data. "This is revolutionary." Within a week, I had meetings with 3 major venture capital firms. David helped me prepare my pitch, and Maya came over every night to help me practice, throwing tough questions at me until my answers were perfect. The first 2 VC firms said the same thing: brilliant, but too risky. The third meeting was different. "Your technology could revolutionize renewable energy storage," said Alexandra Martinez, the lead partner at Quantum Ventures. "But why should we trust a 23-year-old unknown?" I met her eyes. "Because I've spent the last year proving impossible things are possible. Give me a chance to prove one more." They invested $5 million for a 25% stake in my company, which I named Nova Energy Systems. The name was a private joke, a new star rising from nothing. I moved the research to our own facility, hired a small team of brilliant engineers, and worked harder than ever. We faced countless technical challenges, numerous failures, and moments when it seemed everything would fall apart. But 2 years later, we did it. Our first commercial-scale energy storage system was ready for testing. When the results came in, they exceeded even our highest expectations. Our system could store and deliver energy with 99.1% efficiency, nearly 3 times better than the best existing technology. The energy industry exploded with interest. Solar and wind power suddenly became not just viable, but economically superior to fossil fuels. Every major power company wanted our technology. Nova Energy Systems went public 3 years after that first VC investment. The stock price doubled on the first day. By the end of the week, my stake in the company was worth over $100 million. I bought my first suit since leaving home, not from the expensive tailor my father used, but from a boutique that catered to tech executives. Maya, now our head of operations, helped me choose it. "Planning to show off for someone?" she asked with a knowing smile. "No," I said, adjusting the perfectly fitted jacket, "but I think it's time to pay a visit home." I hadn't spoken to my family in 5 years. Through business news and social media, I knew Harrison and Sons Investment Group was struggling. Traditional investment banking was dying, disrupted by financial technology and changing markets. They needed to adapt, to invest in new technologies. Exactly what I had tried to tell them years ago. Now they were facing their biggest crisis yet: a hostile takeover attempt by a mysterious tech-focused investment firm. What they didn't know was that the firm, Digital Horizon Capital, was a subsidiary of Nova Energy Systems, my company. I booked a flight home, my $100 million net worth a far cry from the $100 I'd left with. But I wasn't going back to reconcile or to gloat. I was going back to buy the company that had declared me worthless. Maya caught me staring at my old family photo before I left. "Are you sure about this?" I tucked the photo away. They taught me that money was the only measure of worth. Time to show them exactly what I'm worth. I didn't know then that my return would shake the Harrison family to its core, that my revenge would be both sweeter and more complicated than I'd imagined, or that the $100 lesson they taught me would end up costing them everything. But I was about to find out. The Harrison and Sons Investment Group headquarters hadn't changed. The same imposing limestone building, the same gold lettering, the same air of old money arrogance. But this time, I walked in through the front door not as the disappointing son, but as the CEO of the company trying to acquire them. "Mr. Blake here to see the board," I told a receptionist, using the name I'd adopted after leaving. She directed me to the top floor, not recognizing the prodigal son returning home. The Harrison boardroom was exactly as I remembered. Dark wood paneling, oil paintings of past chairmen, the family crest carved above the fireplace. I played under that table as a child, listening to my father negotiate deals and destroy competitors. Now I sat at the head of that table, waiting. They filed in one by one: board members, executives, and finally, my father. He'd aged more than 5 years should allow. His once commanding presence diminished by stress and failing fortune. He didn't recognize me at first, his eyes sliding past me as he took his seat. "Gentlemen," I began, "I'm here representing Digital Horizon Capital regarding our offer to acquire Harrison and Sons. We're not interested in being acquired by some tech upstart," my father snapped, still not really looking at me. "Harrison and Sons has stood for 150 years and will collapse within 5 if you don't adapt." I cut in, letting my natural voice replace the carefully neutral tone I'd been using. "Isn't that right, Father?" The room went deadly silent. My father's face went from red to white as recognition dawned. "James?" "Hello, Father. Miss me?" One of the board members, old Mr. Peterson, who'd known me since childhood, actually gasped. "Little James Harrison?" "Actually, it's James Blake now," I corrected him. "And I'm here to discuss the future of this company." My father's shock turned to anger. This is some kind of trick. You're working for Digital Horizon?" I smiled. "No, Father. I own Digital Horizon. It's a subsidiary of Nova Energy Systems." I enjoyed watching their faces as the connection hit them. Yes, that Nova Energy Systems. The company revolutionizing energy storage technology worldwide. "Impossible," my father whispered. You left with nothing." "No," I said softly. "I left with $100. Your last lesson about the value of money. Would you like to know what that lesson bought?" I nodded to my assistant, who began distributing folders to each board member. Nova Energy Systems is now worth $4.2 billion. Digital Horizon Capital, which you somehow failed to investigate properly, is our investment arm. Over the past year, we've been quietly buying Harrison and Sons stock through various shells and subsidiaries. I opened my home folder. As of this morning, we own 45% of your shares. We also own the majority of your corporate debt, which, thanks to your recent difficulties, is substantial. The blood drained from my father's face as he realized the full scope of what I'd accomplished. The son he'd thrown away had returned to take everything. "The offer is simple," I continued. "Harrison and Sons will be absorbed into Digital Horizon. The family name will be retired. The board will be dissolved." I paused, looking directly at my father. "And you will step down, effective immediately." "You can't do this," he sputtered. "The family legacy. The family legacy is dying." I cut in sharply. "Your investment strategies are outdated, your technology is ancient, and your arrogance has blinded you to the changing world. I tried to tell you this 5 years ago, but you were too proud to listen." Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. "James, surely we can discuss this. You're still a Harrison. No, I said firmly. You all made it very clear that I stopped being a Harrison the day I chose to build something new instead of clinging to something old. I'm not here for reconciliation. I'm here for business. I stood up, straightening my custom-made suit that cost more than that first $100 1,000 times over. You have 24 hours to accept the offer. If you refuse, Digital Horizon will call in all outstanding loans immediately. Harrison and Sons will not survive the week. My father found his voice again. You would destroy your own family's company? Everything we built? No, Father. You destroyed it with your stubborn refusal to change. I'm offering you a chance to save what's left. The jobs, the clients, the legacy you claim to care about so much. Whether that legacy bears the Harrison name is no longer your choice. I walked to the door, then turned back one last time. Oh, and Father? Remember when you said money was the only measure of a man's worth? I smiled coldly. By your own measure, what am I worth now? The next 24 hours passed in a blur of legal meetings and press inquiries. News of Nova Energy Systems' takeover bid had leaked, sending Harrison and Sons stock into chaos. My father tried to fight, of course, calling in old favors and trying to rally support. But I had anticipated everything. Every escape route was blocked. Every potential white knight was already aligned with us. Every financial lifeline was closed. The empire he'd spent his life protecting was now in my hands. They signed the papers the next day, in the same room where he'd once thrown $100 at my feet. As the lawyers finalized the details, my father approached me. He looked old, beaten, but there was something else in his eyes. Something that might have been respect, or perhaps just resignation. You planned this, he said quietly. All of it. No, Father. You planned it the moment you decided my dreams weren't worth respecting. I just built something better than you could imagine. He nodded slowly. And now? Will you destroy everything out of revenge? I looked at him for a long moment. No, I'm going to rebuild it into something that actually matters. Harrison and Sons will become part of a company that's helping to solve the world's energy crisis, not just moving money from one account to another. The fact that it's no longer yours is just poetic justice. As I turned to leave, he called out one last time. James, that $100. I smiled. Best investment I ever made, Father. It taught me exactly what I didn't want to become. The transition took 6 months. I restructured the company completely, modernizing its operations and redirecting its resources towards sustainable energy investments. Most of the employees kept their jobs. After all, this wasn't about punishing them for my father's sins. My father retired to our old family estate, his pride more wounded than his wallet. I'd ensured he kept enough money to live comfortably. My mother tried to reach out several times, always with hints about reconciliation, but I kept my distance. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ashes. A year later, I stood in my office at Nova Energy Systems headquarters, looking out over Silicon Valley. Maya brought in a small package that had arrived from my father. Inside was $100, the same bills he'd thrown at me 5 years ago. I'd left them on his desk after the takeover signing. With them was a note. You were worth more than I knew. I took the bills to the cafe where my journey had started. The same barista who'd once given me shelter was now a senior executive in my company, but the cafe still made the best coffee in Palo Alto. I left the $100 as a tip. Some might call it petty, using my success to take over my father's company. But I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because sometimes the only way to fix a broken legacy is to tear it down and build something better in its place. They say money can't buy happiness. But $100 taught me something more valuable. The true worth of a person isn't in their bank account or their family name. It's in what they choose to build with what they have. I built an empire, and I did it not because of the Harrison name, but in spite of it. The $100 I left with bought me something priceless. The freedom to become who I was meant to be. The millions I returned with, they just proved I was right all along. And that's worth more than any family fortune.